So two CW shows came back yesterday, and they of course were Legends of Tomorrow and The Flash. And honestly, I was looking more forward to Legends of Tomorrow, and it ended up being the better of the two episodes, and it had to be one of the best episodes of Legends of Tomorrow ever. So season 2, episode number 9 of DC's Legends of Tomorrow is entitled Raiders of the Lost Ark. And basically, the episode starts off, and the Legends travel back to 1967 because they've heard that Rip is in that time. They try to get to him, and they approach him at a film studio, and he has no idea who he is. But the fun thing that's extremely funny is he's directing movies about their lives and their exploits in the past without even knowing it. And so he doesn't know the Legends, and of course he doesn't know who the Legion of Doom is either. Whenever um, Malcolm and Dahrk show up. They fight over Rip, but they're unable to get him because they're too busy fighting, and the police come and take him to the precinct. So after this, the Legends and, of course, the Legion both try to track him down at the precinct, and the Legends get to him first, and they actually, after a quick battle, skirmish, they take him back to the Wave Rider. And they come to figure out that he gave the Spear of Destiny that he was, of course, trying to hide. Well, he broke the Spear of Destiny into multiple pieces, but he gave the part in this time to George Lucas, a young George Lucas who hasn't made Star Wars yet and who hasn't made Indiana Jones yet. And so Nate and Ray loses his ability to think critically and to think about how he basically, in the alternate reality, he's a yoga teacher because he never saw Star Wars, so he's never inspired to get a PhD. Whereas Nate was never inspired to become a historian, so he loses all his historical knowledge. So they basically had to go back in time to convince George Lucas to make Star Wars and Indiana Jones and to pursue his filming career. And it's very hilarious. It's a very crazy storyline. So they go back to the past and they basically ask or tell him to make movies, and he says he'll make them again. And they ask him where the spear is, and he says he threw it away. Of course, that comes out of George whenever the Legion comes back, and basically Malcolm and Dahrk are holding up all of them and all the Legends and saying, hey, take us to the trash dump where you dumped the spear off. So they take George Lucas, Nate, Ray, and Amaya to this trash dump, and they're in this trash compactor. And the trash compactor starts to collapse, and they find the spear, but of course they can't give it to him. So they make George promise. The Legends show up, and they start fighting the Legion of Doom. But the Legion of Doom clearly has the upper hand until George Lucas says that he will make those movies, and Nate gains his powers back, and Ray figures out how to use the suit again. So they basically fight off the Legion of Doom at the end of the episode, and the Legion of Doom goes away. They've captured Rip, but all of the Legends go away, and they have the part of the Spear of Destiny like they were trying to get. It's also important to note that the other storyline in this episode involved Mick Rory, of course, because he's been seeing the hallucinations of Snart. Him and Stein trying to work through his emotional problems and see why he's seeing him. They figure out there's this device in his head that Stein removes. They thought, this device had been causing the hallucinations, but it hadn't been. What had been causing the hallucinations is just mixed emotions, so they work through those. It's really cool to see Rory and Stein sort of get this little dynamic built up and this little, close relationship throughout this episode as, Stein's helping him out through his friend's death. And Stein was sort of the character that Rory hadn't connected to yet, so it was great to see that in this episode. So overall, this episode was phenomenal. All the jokes were amazing. There was this scene where Damien, Dahrk, and Malcolm were in the elevator, and elevator music was on. It was just perfectly timed. It was hilarious. There's meta humor in this because when Rip was directing the movie about their exploits, he criticized Vandal Savage for not being a menacing villain at all, which was clearly one of the problems with the first season of the show. So the show's even making fun of itself. And this episode was just lighthearted. It was fun. It was enjoyable. It was probably one of the funniest episodes of any CW superhero show I've ever seen, if not the funniest. It was just humor constantly coming at you. And the whole idea of George Lucas not making Star Wars films and how that affects, how Star Wars and Indiana Jones affects all of our lives, it is interesting to think about, what if George Lucas didn't pursue his film career and we never would have gotten those movies? How much different would our world be, and sort of explore that in a really fun and interesting way. And I really just loved all the humor in this episode, all the lightheartedness, and it was cool to see Damien Dahrk sort of have that buddy up with Malcolm Merlyn. For the first time, it sort of felt like they had chemistry together on screen. And also, it was hilarious how Rip didn't even know who he was. He thought he was this film student named Phil, who has a little bit of a problem with drugs, and who says, maybe I need to stop taking drugs because he thinks this is all hallucination, which is hilarious throughout the episode because Rip doesn't even know that he's Rip Hunter, and so he's just in the middle of this the whole time, and he has no idea what's going on. And the side plot worked perfectly as well. The Rory Stein plot worked so great because Rory, of course, was going through this rough time with Snart dying, and Stein hadn't really had time with him, so putting them on screen together to try to solve that was phenomenal. And so this episode was amazing. So for Season 2, Episode number 9 of DC's Legends of Tomorrow, Raiders of the Lost Ark, I would have to give it a 9.5 out of 10 because this episode had amazing humor. The George Lucas storyline was great. Rip not knowing who he was and thinking he was Phil was phenomenal, and the whole Mick and Stein plot was great. This is one of the best episodes of DC's Legends of Tomorrow ever. And if you haven't been watching the show, if you started in Season 1, I would suggest going back and watching Season 1, bear through it, all the inconsistencies, and get to Season 2, because Season 2 was phenomenal. And Raiders of the Lost Ark really proves how awesome this show can be. It's just so fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and that's what I've been looking for in superhero shows. Superhero shows that don't take themselves too seriously. Because we have the darker, grittier series on Netflix. We have Daredevil, we have Jessica Jones, we have Luke Cage. So it's nice to have this change of pace. In the midweek, seeing this fun episode where they go back in time and try to save George Lucas is just hilarious. So, again, I'd have to give this episode a 9.5 out of 10. I hope you enjoyed Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I hope you've enjoyed this review and recap. Remember, like and subscribe for more. This has been Jonesy from Joneser TV, signing off.